My wife coldly said, "It's not cheating if it's just comfort." And for a few seconds I genuinely couldn't tell if she was joking. She said it casually, almost lazily, while scrolling through her phone on the couch, like she was reading a weather report, not redefining fidelity in real time. She didn't even look up. Her voice was flat, detached, practiced, and all I could do was stand there in the doorway, trying to decide if what I'd heard was a punchline or a confession. The thing is, this didn't come out of nowhere. For months, I'd sensed something strange in her. Not distance. She had always been a little distant, even back when we were just having fun. Back when our relationship was a casual arrangement built on convenience, chemistry, and late-night impulsiveness. No, distance was familiar. What changed was the performance. She had become performative in her affection, over-the-top compliments in front of friends, forced laughter, exaggerated displays of devotion, all the glossy social media perfect expressions of a marriage that she didn't actually feel. It was like she wanted an audience for every moment that was supposed to be private. And lately, that performance had been slipping. It started with something small. Her phone. She'd gone from leaving it on counters, on tables, in her bag, completely unconcerned, to keeping it glued to her hand, turned face down, notifications off, screen angled away whenever I walked by. And for weeks, I didn't question it. Not because I was oblivious, but because I trusted her, trusted us, until the night I walked into the living room and heard her say it. "It's not cheating if it's just comfort." She was texting someone, fingers moving fast. Too fast. "Who are you talking to?" I asked quietly. She didn't flinch, didn't even lift her head. "A friend," she answered, casual as ever. "You're being paranoid again." Again. That word landed harder than I expected, because it wasn't true, but she wanted it to be. She wanted to frame me as insecure so she wouldn't have to explain anything. I didn't push further. I just stood there, watching the faint smile curve at the edge of her mouth as she typed. She looked pleased. Not with me, not with our conversation, but with whoever was on the other end of that screen. Our relationship had always been complicated. Before we got married, we were friends with benefits, something she insisted on for almost a year. She said she wasn't built for commitment. She said she liked her freedom. She said she didn't feel relationships were her thing. Back then, I never pressed. I told myself that the connection we had would eventually shift into something deeper. And it did, or at least, I thought it did. One random afternoon, completely out of nowhere, she walked into my workshop, sawdust everywhere, me covered in wood shavings, and said, "Let's just do it. Let's make this official." No explanation, no romantic gesture, just a decision. I said yes because I loved her. She said yes because, well, I still don't fully know. But in hindsight, the answer is painfully clear. She didn't choose me. She chose stability, the version of stability she thought I could provide. A few nights after the comfort comment, I walked past her office and heard her talking softly. Too softly. Her voice had that intimate tone she never used with me anymore. I paused outside the door before I could talk myself out of it. "I told you. It's nothing serious," she was whispering. "He doesn't get it. He never does." My stomach tightened. A man's voice responded through the speaker, muffled but unmistakably flirtatious. "Does he even suspect?" She laughed. Quiet. Sharp. "No. He's too trusting. He always has been." My chest went cold. Trusting. Not loving. Not kind. Not devoted. Just trusting. An attribute, not a connection. A vulnerability, not a virtue. She wasn't describing a husband. She was describing a blind spot. I stepped back quietly, careful not to make a sound. My heart wasn't racing. My palms weren't sweating. There was no dramatic shock or heartbreak. Just clarity. A stillness I hadn't felt in years. Not anger. Not panic. Understanding. Finally, painfully, fully understanding who she really was beneath all the curated softness and charm. I didn't confront her that night. Or the next. Or the next. Instead, I watched. I listened. And what I found wasn't just infidelity. Not the physical kind, anyway. It was emotional duplicity. Patterns of late walks. Sudden girls' nights, with no selfies to show for it. New lingerie hidden beneath folded sweaters. Inside jokes with someone she claimed was just an old friend. Messages erased minutes after receiving them. And the worst part? She wasn't even being careful. She didn't think she had to be. Because in her mind, I was harmless. Predictable. Comfortably blind. A man who would never leave, because he had already accepted the role she had written for him. The stable one. The loyal one. The safe one. Her emotional doormat, with a marriage certificate. The breaking point wasn't loud. It wasn't explosive. It wasn't the kind of thing that would make headlines or spark screaming matches. It was a single text message she received while cooking dinner. Her phone lit up on the counter. Normally, she'd snatch it up immediately. But she was stirring sauce and couldn't reach it in time. So I saw it. Just one sentence. One line that made everything click into place. When are you telling him? I'm getting tired of being your escape. I didn't pick up the phone. I didn't touch it. I didn't even comment. I just walked to the dining table, sat down, and let the truth settle in. Not the truth that she was cheating. Not the truth that she was lying. But the truth that she had been using me as emotional shelter while giving her real affection to someone else entirely. And that realization didn't break me. It woke me. For the first time in our marriage, I saw myself not as her husband, not as her consolation prize, not as her stability, but as a man who deserved better than being someone's escape route. The gaslighting, the excuses, the emotional minimalism she insisted was just her personality. It all made sense. She didn't love me less. She never loved me at all. Not fully. Not truthfully. She loved what I provided. Convenience. Consistency. A place to land when her real emotional world got too messy. That was the moment I knew. The marriage was over. It just hadn't ended yet. And the quiet, controlled way I would walk away would be the one thing she never saw coming. I used to think I was good at reading people. I used to think I could sense when the ground beneath my feet started cracking. But with Mira, the cracks were quiet. Too quiet. It was 2 weeks after she'd casually introduced that new name into her vocabulary. Just a friend from before. Nothing serious. A friend from before who suddenly texted her late at night. A friend from before whose name she said too carefully, like someone holding a match, afraid it might burn but unwilling to let it go. I told myself not to be paranoid. I told myself she deserved trust. I told myself that her smile, her softness, her habit of drifting over to me and pulling my hands into hers, they all meant something solid. But the truth was beginning to show in the smallest ways. Mira had started keeping her phone face down, and every time it buzzed, she'd go quiet for half a second. Half a second is not long, but it's enough time for a lie to take its first breath. One night, she was folding laundry, humming to herself, while I sat on the couch pretending to scroll. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, froze, then tapped it away fast. She didn't realize I'd seen the first name on the preview. She didn't realize the blood had drained from my face. It was his name, the so-called friend from before. The totally harmless, nothing to worry about guy she insisted was just part of an old circle she barely spoke to. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I'd been through enough in my life to understand one thing. When someone wants to betray you, they don't do it all at once. They do it gradually, like dust settling on furniture. Quiet, invisible, until one day you run your hand over the surface and realize everything's coated in it. The next morning, Mira told me she'd be out with coworkers after work. She didn't look at me long when she said it. Her voice had become administrative, like she was reading from a script she'd rehearsed too many times. I kept my response simple. Have fun. I watched her face when I said it. The tiny flicker of surprise. People who lie expect friction. When they don't get it, they slip. That night, Around 9:30, she texted me. Running late. Don't wait up. I sat there, staring at the message, feeling a quiet kind of heaviness. Not anger, not panic, just the slow understanding that the person I loved was choosing someone else in real time. But again, no confrontation. Instead, I went to bed early. And for the first time in months, I slept peacefully. There's a strange, almost cruel comfort in confirmed suspicion. It hurts, yes, but it unchains you. The next day, the universe handed me clarity without me having to dig for it. I was grabbing lunch near her office, pure coincidence, when I saw her across the street. Not alone. She was with him. And the way she looked at him, it was softness I hadn't seen directed at me in months. They weren't holding hands. They weren't touching. But you don't need physical contact to recognize intimacy. There's a kind of closeness built in silence, in leaning a little too close, in smiling with a different kind of warmth. I didn't approach them, didn't make a scene, didn't even feel the shock I thought I would. Instead, I felt something shift inside me. Something steady, something freeing. I walked back to my car, slowly, calmly, and halfway there, I started remembering all the moments she had looked me in the eyes and insisted I was imagining things. You're overthinking. He's just a friend. Why are you acting insecure? Gaslighting isn't always explosive. Sometimes it's delivered with a gentle voice, a soft smile, a hand on your shoulder. Sometimes it wears the mask of reassurance. But the effect is the same. You begin doubting your intuition, your memory, your instincts. And I realized something as I drove home. I wasn't losing her. I was watching the version of her I loved fade away, revealing the truth underneath. Later that evening, when she came home smelling faintly of cologne I didn't own, she kissed my cheek and said, "Work was exhausting." I looked at her, and for the first time, I saw her clearly. Not the woman I loved, not the partner I believed in, just a person who had already left me in her heart, months before I ever noticed. I could have confronted her then. I could have demanded explanations, proof, apologies. But I didn't, because I wasn't ready for the confrontation yet. Not until I understood myself more than I understood her lies. And deep down, I knew part 3 was inevitable. The moment where the truth would stop whispering and start shouting. The moment where I'd finally stopped trying to hold together something she had already broken. It was coming soon, faster than either of us realized. The night everything finally snapped into clarity wasn't dramatic. No shouting, no slamming doors, no cinematic revelations. It was simpler than that, almost painfully simple. Mira was in the kitchen rinsing dishes, humming softly, acting like a woman whose conscience was spotless. I watched her for a moment, wondering how long she had been rehearsing this version of herself. The version that pretended nothing was wrong. The version that hoped I wouldn't notice. But I had noticed. Piece by piece, truth had been falling into my hands whether I wanted it or not. I stepped into the kitchen and said her name gently. Mira. She didn't turn fully, just glanced over her shoulder, like I'd interrupted something minor instead of dragging into the light. Something she thought she'd successfully hidden. "What's up?" she asked, casual, too casual. I breathed in, steady. "You weren't with co-workers the other night." The sponge in her hand froze. Not dropped, not thrown, just stopped. She turned off the faucet slowly. Then she faced me with that particular expression, half irritation, half fear, that people wear when they realize their script is no longer useful. "What are you talking about?" It was almost admirable, her commitment to the performance. I didn't raise my voice, didn't accuse, didn't offer her the chaos she might have expected. Instead, I spoke quietly, like someone recounting the weather. "I saw you with him yesterday, during lunch." Silence, a deep, dense silence that filled our small kitchen like fog. She didn't deny it this time, didn't spin a story, didn't pretend. Instead, she whispered, barely audible, "You weren't supposed to see that." And somehow, that hurt more than any confession. Not the cheating, not the lying, But the fact she framed it like the only problem was that I'd witnessed it. I nodded slowly. That was the moment I fully understood. She had crossed the line long before I ever caught her. "I'm done," I said softly. Her eyes shot up. "Wait, what? Done? Just because?" "Not because you cheated," I interrupted. "Because you let me question my own instincts for months while you walked away from us in your heart." Her mouth opened, ready to argue, but no words came. I continued, still calm, still steady. "You made me feel insecure for noticing the truth. You made me feel guilty for being hurt. You made me feel unreasonable for seeing what was right in front of me." Her eyes were glassy now, but I kept going. Not to hurt her, not to punish her, but because it was the first time I'd spoken without fear she'd twist my words. I can't stay with someone who treats my intuition like an inconvenience. She took a step forward. "I can fix this," she whispered. But there was no conviction in her voice. Only panic, the panic of someone who never expected consequences. "You could have fixed it months ago," I replied. "But you didn't want to. You wanted both worlds." She looked away, swallowing hard, guilt flashing across her face in a way that almost made her look small. Small and uncertain, like someone who finally realized that comfort is not the same as love, and that access to my heart was not guaranteed. A long silence followed, not hostile, just final. She asked the question eventually, voice trembling. "What are you going to do?" And I smiled, not out of joy, but out of release. "I'm going to leave with my dignity intact. That's more than enough." I packed quietly. She didn't stop me. She didn't beg. She didn't bargain. She simply watched, realizing the difference between losing a fight and losing a person. When I walked out the door, her voice cracked behind me. "Please don't go." I paused, not to reconsider, but to acknowledge the weight of the moment. "You already left me, Mira," I said gently. "I'm just catching up." I closed the door, and for the first time in a long time, breathing felt easy. Weeks later, a mutual friend told me the obvious. Her friend from before didn't choose her. He wasn't interested in anything real. He drifted away the moment things got complicated. That was her consequence. Not because I wanted revenge, but because life has a simple way of revealing character. People who lie to themselves eventually get lied to. People who play with feelings eventually get played. And people who throw away loyalty eventually learn what it feels like to be disposable. But her story wasn't my concern anymore. Mine was simple. I found my voice again. I learned to trust my intuition. I learned that walking away quietly can sometimes be the loudest thing you ever do. And I realized something important. Losing someone who doesn't value you isn't a loss. It's liberation.